Martin Fowler, James By, was a stalwart of EastEnders, and his death rocked the lives of nearly every Albert Square resident. Stacy Slater, Lacey Turner, Martin's true love with whom he'd reconciled moments before his demise, was utterly broken, the loss of Martin eventually seeing her own departure from the square. Sonia Fowler, Natalie Cassidy, was forced to deliver the heartbreaking news to Bex Fowler, Jasmine Armfield, the daughter she shared with Martin, while dealing with her own grief over losing her childhood sweetheart. Ruby Allen, Louisa Litton, a character intrinsically linked with both Martin and Stacy, also left Walford amid her grief, while Sharon Watts, Letitia Dean, took an extended leave of absence, heading to Australia to support her grieving friend Michelle Fowler, Jenna Russell. The loss of Martin was seismic, with residents gathering in Harry's barn to celebrate his life, mourning the death of a beloved EastEnders legend. Speaking at the time of his alter ego's death, James said, "Saying goodbye is not easy, but after 10 years at EastEnders and on the night of the show's epic 40th anniversary, the time felt right. It's an honor to leave on a story of this magnitude. A huge thank you to all the fans of the show. EastEnders wouldn't be what it is without you. And to the BBC and EastEnders team for trusting me with this role for so many years. This fruit and veg man will always hold a special place in my heart. It's time to look forward, and I'm incredibly excited for what the future holds. R.I.P. Martin Fowler." With Martin gone, a remnant of him does linger in Walford. His old shed, which Ross Marshall, Alex Walkinshaw, and Harvey Monroe, Ross Boatman, have big plans for. They want to turn it into a man cave. Both previously formed a foursome alongside Alfie Moon, Shane Ritchie, and Ian Beale, Adam Woodyard, who vowed to provide a safe space to talk in. Now, Ross and Harvey plan to make that space tangible, but they need the key from Gene Slater, Gillian Wright. When Ross and Harvey tell Zach Hudson, James Farrar, of their plan, he's initially reticent, believing that it's disrespectful to Martin's memory. When he talks to Barney Mitchell, Lewis Bridgman, though, his son helps him to realize that Martin himself would have been fully behind the idea. Zach approaches Jean and tells her of the group's plans for the shed, and puts his all into persuading her that it's a good idea. The only problem? Jean turns around to find Ross and Harvey trying to steal the key. As the shed renovation begins, the square had seen grief before. In EastEnders, sorrow was almost part of the pavement, woven into the cracks between Albert Square's familiar cobbles. But this time felt different. This time it was Martin. Martin Fowler had always been the steady one. Not the loudest, not the most dramatic, but the kind of man who held everything together when everything else fell apart. And now, as the community gathered to honor him, that quiet strength was painfully absent. The tribute had been Nicola's idea. She stood at the center of the square, clutching a piece of folded paper so tightly it looked as though it might crumble in her hands. Around her, neighbors gathered in uneasy clusters, some whispering, some staring, some simply waiting. A small table had been set up near the market stalls, covered in photographs of Martin, laughing with his kids, working behind the fruit and veg barrow, sharing a pint in the Queen Vic. On the surface, it was a beautiful tribute. But beneath that surface, something was already beginning to crack. "Thank you all for coming," Nicola began, her voice trembling but determined. "Today isn't just about remembering Martin. It's about celebrating everything he was to all of us." A murmur rippled through the crowd, because not everyone agreed. At the back, Stacy folded her arms tightly across her chest. Her expression was unreadable, somewhere between anger and heartbreak. Next to her, Ruby shifted uncomfortably, glancing between Nicola and the gathering tension. "Celebrating," Stacy muttered under her breath. "Is that what we're calling this?" Martin had been many things, loyal, kind, stubborn, but he'd also been complicated. His life had been tangled in secrets, difficult choices, and relationships that never quite found their peace. And for some, this polished version of Martin, the one frozen in smiling photographs, felt like a betrayal of the truth. Nicola continued, unaware, or perhaps unwilling to acknowledge, the unease spreading through the crowd. "The man who would do anything for the people he loved," she said, her voice growing stronger. "Even when it cost him everything." That was the moment the mood shifted. "Everything." Stacy stepped forward, her voice cutting through the air like glass. "You think you know what it cost him?" The square fell silent. Nicola froze, her paper trembling. "Stacy, this isn't the time." "No, it's exactly the time," Stacy snapped. Because you're standing there acting like he was some kind of saint. Like he didn't make mistakes. Like he didn't hurt people. A ripple of shock passed through the onlookers. Stacy, someone whispered, but she didn't stop. You want to talk about who Martin was? She continued, her voice breaking now. Then talk about all of it. Talk about the arguments. The choices. The things he never got to fix. Nicola's composure began to crumble. This is a tribute, she insisted. It's meant to bring people together. Not if it's built on lies, Stacy fired back. The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. For a moment no one moved. No one spoke. Even the market traders, usually so quick with a comment or a joke, stood frozen behind their stalls. Then Ruby stepped forward cautiously. Maybe we're all just grieving differently, she said softly. Maybe this isn't about right or wrong. But the damage had already been done. Voices began to rise, quiet at first, then louder. She's right though, someone muttered. It's not the whole story. But it's not meant to be. Then what's the point? The tribute, once meant to unite the square, was unraveling before everyone's eyes. Nicola looked around, panic flickering across her face. Please, she pleaded. This isn't what Martin would have wanted. That stopped them. Because that was the question, wasn't it? What would Martin have wanted? A perfect memory? Or an honest one? Stacy's expression softened, just for a moment. He would have wanted the truth, she said quietly, even when it hurt. Nicola swallowed hard, her grip on the paper loosening. I wanted people to remember him kindly. And we will, Stacy replied. But kindness doesn't mean pretending. The tension shifted. Not gone but changed. More reflective now. More fragile. One by one, people began to speak. Not in speeches, not in rehearsed words, but in fragments of memory. He helped me when I had nothing, one neighbor said. He could be stubborn as anything, another added with a small, sad smile. He always showed up, someone else whispered. The tribute became something else entirely. Messy. Honest. Real. Nicola slowly lowered her paper, tears slipping down her cheeks, not just from grief, but from the realization that she had been trying to hold on to something that couldn't exist. Not here. Not in Albert Square. Perfection didn't belong in this place. Truth did. As the crowd thinned and the square returned to its uneasy rhythm, Stacy lingered by the table of photographs. She picked one up, a picture of Martin laughing, head thrown back, completely unguarded. That's him, she murmured. Not perfect, but real. And somehow that felt like the better tribute after all. Ross begins to open up, leading to the group's next issue. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to EastEnders Spoilers Official.